Leslie, you've been using systems-based leadership for your consulting and leadership work for more than 20 years, I think. And I'm wondering how you got to the idea of having this approach infuse both your work and your leadership of your company, of Care Communications.
Well, Catherine, very simply, I got attracted to systems-based leadership because I wanted to become a better consultant. I wanted my clients to have more success than I saw them having, and I believed that the problem was not my subject matter expertise in health information management, but rather the problem was the process I was using to engage in the consulting engagement.
But what took you to systems-based leadership as opposed to more traditional training programs?
Well, this was about 20 years ago, and I thought perhaps there would be books on how to consult. But most of those books talked about how to write a contract and how to do the billing. So I started looking more into the management literature or the business literature, but there was a real bias in that literature toward management and not very much on relationships, which I believe was more the issue. So I thought one day maybe I needed to look into the behavioral sciences.
Yeah, that's such a leap. How was that useful for you?
Well, it was quite an experience because I didn't have a background in the behavioral sciences, so I began reading about different theories of human behavior because I began to think maybe the way a therapist works with a client would be something that I could adapt in my consulting process. But then, of course, there were many different theories of psychology, and different therapists operated differently depending on what their theory was. So when I came across family systems theory, which had been in use for about 30 years at that time, so the family therapists had a lot of experience, I became intrigued. And I became intrigued as I read more and more about this theory because it talked about families as a relationship system, and that the behavioral patterns in a family would change with the greater the level of anxiety. The more stress on the family, the more pronounced the behavioral patterns became. And as I'm reading about families and patterns of behavior, I realized, my big aha was that I was seeing the same thing in organizations, the same patterns. I was seeing the same patterns in my own family. I could see those patterns in any system. And so as I had that aha, I guess I really got hooked on learning more about family systems theory and then learning more about how family therapists use that theory, that way of thinking as a way to engage their families. And I based my new consulting process on that theory.
And then what took you from your consulting process on into focus on leadership?
Well, as I worked with the theory, as I learned it, and I didn't learn it, I have to be really honest, it took me a couple of years to really internalize the theory and be able to use it in my work with my clients. And as I did that, I would be realizing that these same ideas needed to be applied in my own organization, that I needed to use systems-based leadership, if you will, or family systems theory to run a better company, that I needed to change if my company was going to continue to grow and be successful.
So you've been doing that, as you said, for many years. What would you recommend to a person who was just starting out in the search for a new approach to leadership in their organization?
Well, I think the book we put together, Leading a Business in Anxious Times, is really a very good place to start. And I think it's a good place for three reasons. One is it discusses the theory in very plain English. You don't have to be a psychologist to understand it. It's very accessible as a theory. Secondly, the book is filled with examples, and it also includes 7 full case studies of leaders who have used this approach to leadership over the course of their business careers. And finally, it includes tools. It has self-assessment forms, for the individual leader. It has forms to assess the emotional system of your organization. It has tools to teach you how to diagram the emotional system in your organization. So whether you're somebody who likes to play with the tools first, or really enjoys reading about theory, or who simply wants to pick up the book and read the 7 stories, I think any one of those is a good starting place. And either you'll get intrigued by one or the other, but somewhere in that book there'll be a hook.
It is a good place to start.
Yeah.